The question is, if you're of a higher consciousness, is it going to benefit your health? In other words, are you going to have a stronger defense against things like colds, flus, and various diseases? The answer is it can't be said. Why is that? It's just if I look at the records of the famous people on the planet in the past who had very high levels of consciousness, they weren't necessarily healthier than other people. Because why is that? Well, because you're not your body, number one. That is the biggest illusion that we have, that most people have. The ego believes that it is the body. And at higher states of consciousness, you realize that the body is something that you're associated with, but you're not the body. And so why does the body get sick? The body gets sick because it's more likely your instinct to make it sick. In other words, if you see someone else who's coughing, it's quite likely that you're going to start emulating that person coughing. And these traits of copycatting sick people, you learned when you were very, very young. A young child, a toddler, for example, is walking around in what's essentially a hypnotic state. And they are very open to suggestions. And that's why very young children learn so very well. They don't have a filter, so they just absorb everything. Unfortunately, they're absorbing everything from a 3D world, a low vibrational world, and they imprint on the people around them, their parents. So if their parents get a cold, then the child is going to get a cold because it copies its parents. And this programming is really deeply seated in the programming of the human ego, which is basically what we all use from day to day to navigate planet Earth. So even if you get to the point where you've done a lot of metaphysical research and you come to the conclusion that the reason that you get sick is primarily for the reason I just gave you, it's conditioning. It's basically what you do. If you're in university, you can take a psychology course where you train birds using operant or classical conditioning. And that's exactly what happened to you when you were a very young child. So, go look and see what you can find on operant and classical conditioning. That's what happened to you. Now, how do you break this? It's going to be... I don't have a good answer because I haven't broken this spell that I have with my own body. My own body sees other people who are sick, and is it viruses that are actually being transmitted to me that makes me sick? No. An example was last summer, someone was coughing and they passed me something. And just when that thing they were passing to me came to me, I immediately felt sick, like I had a cold. In other words, they passed me a tennis ball. The person who had the tennis ball was coughing. I got the tennis ball in my head. I immediately felt sick. So there was no time for a virus, a cold virus, to get into my system and multiply like crazy and make me have a cold. But for me, the experience was instantaneously, I felt like I had a horrible cold as soon as I got that tennis ball in my hand. So we have been brainwashed to believe that these things called bacteria and viruses are the source of disease. The reason they're a source of disease is because we're conditioned to believe they are. Another way to look at it is these particular molecules. What is the consciousness of the molecule that causes disease according to medical science? Let's say it's an amoeba, amoebic dysentery, which gives you really bad diarrhea. The consciousness of an amoeba is 1 on the scale of human consciousness. If you're watching this video, your consciousness is way above 1. So how is it that something that has a consciousness of 1 can make you sick if you calibrate at, let's say, 300 on the scale of human consciousness, which is an average person right now? Something that calibrates at 1 is going to drop you from 300 to the point where you're very sick. No, it can't do that. In fact, what would be more likely to happen, not necessarily with an amoeba because it's only a 1-cell organism, but if you took a person who was very low vibration and you were a high vibration and you held your vibration in the presence of this other person, they would become entrained to the higher consciousness. That is why people go and see spiritual teachers, to become entrained to higher vibrations. The same thing can happen, though. You can fall to lower consciousness states if you are in the presence of highly negative things and you don't have your guard up. So Dr. David R. Hawkins gave the example of rap music, gangster music. He said it will lower your vibe. If you enjoy that kind of music and you really get into it, it will lower your vibe. It celebrates criminality, gangsta. And criminality is very low on the scale of human consciousness. It's going to lower your vibe. There are other ways you can raise your consciousness. You can go into amazingly beautiful places. Like if you went to an old growth forest, they would raise your vibe, very high vibration. Or if you were to go into, let's say, the Louvre art gallery in Paris and look at amazing art. Or if you were to go to the Sistine Chapel in Rome and see the work by the Italian masters, the unbelievable, beautiful artwork, that would raise your vibration, entrainment. So that's another piece of the puzzle. As far as getting back to sickness and colds, how are you going to uncondition your body? Well, let's face it, if you learn these conditioned things when you were in a hypnotic state, when you were just a toddler, perhaps if you were hypnotized, you could let go of these conditioned responses. So you could go and see a therapeutic hypnotist to uncondition you, or you could learn how to hypnotize yourself. And, the old idea was autosuggestion, which is self-hypnosis, and then you put on a recording, a tape recording of the information that you want to get to replace the old programming, the garbage programming that causes you to get colds. Will it work? Logically, it could. I haven't tried it, but that's one thing that I will suggest that you investigate is hypnosis. Other things that might help you, maybe energy work. In other words, if you went to see someone who was Reiki on a regular basis, I don't know if that's going to get rid of your conditioning. It quite likely will make you feel better, but you're going to have to do some work to uproot these conditioned beliefs that went into you when you were so young. And if you're interested, I would go and try the hypnosis route. See if you can get very far on that. Maybe learn energy healing, like go take a course in Reiki and start doing it. Start doing Reiki on yourself, on plants, on animals, and other people to really get a feel of what good energy is. And see how you make out. I'm the transdimensional taxi driver.